Welcome to our channel here on YouTube. This is our Satsang with Jonathan Robinson, the Awareness Explorers. If you'd like more information on Jonathan Robinson, you can visit his website, theenlightenmentproject.net, and you can find out more information on our non-dual website, awakening-together.org. Thank you again for watching. We hope you enjoy the Satsang.
Okay, we did it. We're here. Wonderful. I'm so happy to have you here. I just want to give a brief description from this morning, because we did a whole bio this morning, so I'm just going to give a brief one, but this one is from Big Speak Guest Speaker Bio. All right. So Jonathan Robinson, providing simple tools for dramatic results. Jonathan Robinson's key accomplishments include: he's a renowned psychotherapist, keynote speaker, author, and personal productivity expert, and he's reached over 300 million people worldwide with his presentations, medium appearances, books, and tapes. His engaging manner and useful motivational techniques have made him a frequent guest on Oprah and CNN. He is the author of several books, including the New York Times bestseller, Shortcuts to Success, The Little Book of Big Questions, and Communication Miracles for Couples. And his latest book is The Enlightenment Project, How I Went from Depressed to Blessed, and you can too. So I have that book right here. All right. So I also wanted to say that on he has Awareness Explorers, and he has made the following top listener charts on Good Pods. He's number 3 in the top 100 spirituality chart, and he's number 5 in the top 100 religion and spirituality chart. And thank you, Sana, for putting up some of those links. So, Jonathan, would you like to add or comment on anything?
Yeah, my basic comment is it's been a wild ride, and that, going from a depressed person to someone who experiences a lot of joy each day has been something that has helped me to know how to get there. A lot of people, they awaken very quickly. I awakened very slowly by interviewing 100 spiritual teachers over 40 years. Everybody from the late Mother Teresa and Wayne Dyer and Ram Dass to the Dalai Lama, Deepak Chopra, Adyshanti, and Byron Katie. And what I've done is really I was interested in healing myself. I had a very challenging childhood, and figure out ways that everybody can heal themselves with the best ideas and methods. And the Enlightenment Project book is really a greatest hits of the stories of connecting with those teachers and gurus and the best methods. And people don't realize that the best methods are like 100 times more powerful than methods that people are generally using, which are usually about 2,000 years old. Mm-hmm. So I've been able to reach a lot of people because the methods work really well, and I love sharing about them.
Okay, so that takes us, I wanted to go back to age 12 when you started out, but I wanted to know if you would tell us about your deeply depressed teenage years. And from what I heard, or correct me if I'm wrong, you changed your name from Brian.
No, I changed my name from Roy, actually. Oh. Brian was a friend of mine that helped me get out of the depression. I had a stepfather who used to beat me up rather frequently, and my parents argued a lot. I was very violent, very dysfunctional. So I kind of had my midlife crisis at age 12, and that got me into hypnosis and meditation by age 12 as a way of dealing with all that. And then I met a friend named Brian, who was a happy-go-lucky guy who was like fearless. And I realized wow. I mean, for a while I was depressed. And then as I met him and hung out with him, I realized, well, life can actually be fun and joyous. And I got into psychedelics by age 14, which I don't recommend, but it did show me that there was another way of being and that there was a whole world outside of my mind. And that made me even more focused on how to call it find inner peace and love and joy or enlightenment. And then it became kind of like a hobby. You know, how can I meet these people? How can I be inspired by people who really are joyous? And so that's been a little bit of my path for the last 50 years.
Okay, so now what I'd like to do is jump. I want to go back to that later also, but I want to jump to college when you were given a dare to overcome your fear. So share that with us, please.
Well, it's a very funny story, and it shows that your life can change in half an hour. You know, I was still pretty shy at age 17. I was a student at UCLA, and I'd never asked a woman out on a date because I was terrified of rejection. So what ended up happening was a friend said, you know, why are you just moping around? You should go out there. And I said, well, you know, I'm afraid of rejection. He said, tell you what, if you get rejected by 10 women today, I'll treat you to an all expense paid trip to Hawaii. And he was a rich friend. So I knew he was going to do it. Well, this made my brain hurt because, you know, I really wanted to go to Hawaii. So he said, yeah, let's do it. So we went down to the university bookstore. And while I was getting ready to ask a woman out, I realized why I'd never done this. My body started shaking uncontrollably and beads of sweat were dripping off my face. So I go up to the first woman and my voice cracks. I go like, hello, you know, like that. And she turns around, sees the guy shaking and sweating. And she says, are you all right? Do you need an ambulance or a doctor? You know, she thought I was having a seizure. So I finally convinced her not to call the doctor or an ambulance, and an awkward conversation ensued. And eventually I asked her out and she said, well, I have a boyfriend, so I'm not available. Are you sure you're all right? Do you need anything? You know, like that. But, you know, it's interesting when you face your fears, they get a lot easier each time you do it. So like by the fourth woman, I was feeling confident, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen? I would get rejected. And that was one step closer to Hawaii. So I started to feel really good breaking out of this fear. And then the seventh woman finally kind of ruined my momentum. You know, by now I kind of had a script and I said, yeah, you know, you look really nice. I don't know people here. I'm new here. Would you like to go out sometime? And she said, sure. At that moment, I realized I had no script for sure. So I said, sure what? And she said, yeah, I'd like to go out. And I go, really? You know, and she writes down her phone number. Now I feel on top of the world, whereas just, you know, 20 minutes later, I was terrified. Well, when you feel really good and you feel alive and joyous, it's very magnetic. So the next 6 women all said yes to me. And now I had a new problem. I had to figure out a way to get more rejections. So I figure I'll start acting like a jerk. So I go up to a woman and I go, hey, baby, you look smoking hot. Why don't you come to my place Friday night? I'll show you a really good time. What do you say, sugar lips? So this woman, her jaw is just dropping and she looks at me and it's silent for a while. And then she says, sure. She thought I was being pretty funny. So she, you know, said yes. And my act was funny. Anyways, so I threw in some water, did the shaking routine, got 3 final rejections, went to Hawaii. But more important, when people ask me, how did you interview every famous spiritual leader on earth? And I said, well, when I was 17, I took my fear of rejection from a level 10 of terror to a level 5 of mild dislike. And when you can go against your fear and do something, then you're unstoppable. So it showed me that with the right method or idea, you can really create major transformation that affects the rest of your life in 20 minutes.
With that, I was just wondering if you'd like to take us through a brief meditation on fear, because I know you have
Sure.
all these great 3-minute meditations.
Okay, I'll do one from my book. And this is one where you can close your eyes just for a moment. It only takes about 2 or 3 minutes. And what you're trying to do is first think of something that brings up fear in you. It could be asking somebody out. It could be a situation. It could even be a bad memory. But just for a moment, think of something. Allow yourself to feel the fear as you think to yourself, I am afraid. Just feel that. Allow yourself to feel it. Next, as you feel the sensations of fear in your body, say to yourself, I am aware of feeling fear. And notice how this new phrase might change how you relate to the fear you're feeling. And next, as you feel the sensations of fear in your body, notice that these sensations exist within a larger field of spacious awareness. Perhaps by feeling the space around your body, it will help you to notice that it's a feeling within spacious awareness, and see what that feels like. And then, as best you can, relax into your spacious awareness and think to yourself, as this spacious awareness, fear is allowed and even welcomed. And notice what that feels like. And finally, say the phrase, awareness and fear are not separate. And see how that resonates in your body. And when you're ready, take your time. You can slowly come back to your room and notice how you feel. And just by changing how we relate to fear, it can change the feelings rather suddenly and dramatically. So when you don't let fear or anxiety stop you from being your best self, you are quickly creating a transformation. And most people, their relationship with fear or anxiety is one of fear is the master and you're the servant. But when you master fear, it leads to a lot more possibilities in life, including the fear of like an ego death, which can happen before one does more awakening.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or any questions? Shauna, please.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Shauna.
That was fabulous. I mean, in less than 3 minutes, I saw the different stages of my relationship with fear change. It was that quick. I mean, being able to feel the fear in the body, see the fear as an object in awareness, and then see it all as one. And it just totally changed my relationship to the fear that was present that I brought up in my mind in that moment. So thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you know, what I found when I interviewed all these people is that sometimes people had really great techniques, you know, that weren't just good. They were like awesomely fantastic. And, you know, once you change your relationship with fear, that's a big part of life. It really makes a difference in every part of your life. So
Okay.
Thank you for sharing. Was there a question there or just wanted to share what you experienced? Okay, great.
Rhoda?
Hi, Jonathan. Hi,
Hi,
Lynn.
Rhoda.
Nice to be with you. First of all, I have to say it's a pretty surreal experience to see you speaking and not just feel you as like a voice in my head.
Do you listen to the Awareness Explorers podcast or what?
Yes, I
Yeah,
do.
okay.
And we often use meditations in the sanctuary that you and Brian do together. So just love the work that you all are doing, and just really appreciate you for what you've been doing. I was intrigued by the amount of fear that I felt the second that you asked me to conjure it up. And I would not have guessed that I could feel it that quickly. And then to feel the separate, the fact that it's not separate from everything else that's here, just really, really helpful to see. I am curious though, because your story just, first of all, had me laughing harder than I have laughed in a while. So thank you for that.
Sure.
So was that like your first foray into understanding how fear just is something to be with and be in and just allow it to do what it does?
It wasn't probably my first, this friend I had in high school, the senior year, he decided that he was just going to live as if he did not have fear. So he'd ask himself the question, how would I be, or what would I say if I had no fear? And he said, well, and the answers were very interesting. He said, well, I would dress up how I want to dress up, which was very different than how everybody else was dressing up. When the teacher gave a stupid assignment, he'd stand up and say, you don't want to look at this assignment. We don't want to do it. Why are we doing this? This is all crazy. Let's all just decide not to do it. And things like that. He said to me once, if you give me a quarter, I'll dance for 2 minutes in the middle of the rally court. I said, okay, here's a quarter. Well, he started to do tap dancing in the middle of the rally court. Ends up, everybody saw this. They didn't know what to make of it. So people just started throwing money. In those 2 minutes, he made $87.
Wow.
It was just, we'd never seen anything, certainly in high school, where somebody just decides, I'm not going to live a life of fear. And it was very inspiring to me. I couldn't do it at the time, but over time, I ended up teaching a class for 15 years at the local city college called Risking the Art of Being More Fully Alive. And the assignment every week was to take a small risk, not a big one, a small risk in the area of relationships, in the area of money, in the area of spirituality, in the area of your body, things like that. So I just realized that aliveness comes from expanding your edges, expanding your boundaries. And it kind of became like a hobby. And also I'm easily bored. So, if
Must be why you like to tell entertaining stories. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Sure thing, Rhoda.
All right. Thank you, Rhoda. Joe.
Thanks, Lynn, and thanks, Jonathan, for being here. And first, I want to say, when you were telling your story about asking the women out, and at some point, I must have been making some funny noises when I was laughing, because my wife came in here and knocked on the door and said, "Are you okay?" I mean, it's the exact same thing you were saying, right? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. You want to go out? So anyway, I want to ask you, if you're willing to, you mentioned something at the end of the little meditation we did with the fear thing. And I wrote some words down. I don't know if I got the complete thought, but what I thought I heard you say was, changing your relationship with fear can prepare you for things such as an ego death, which can happen before someone has done awakening work or something. I forget the whole thought there. Can you say some more about that? Is it?
Yeah, well, fear shows up in us in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's a fear of failure. Sometimes it's a fear of rejection. Sometimes it's a fear of looking stupid. Sometimes it's the fear of the unknown. And as you awaken, you sometimes, it is hard to let go of our feeling of separateness, of being an ego, of being a character. That's a more subtle spiritual fear that also shows up as you are on the awakening path. So people are at different places on the journey, and you have to face different types of fear on the journey. Fear of failure is different than fear of looking stupid, which is different than fear of letting go of your sense of self so that you can merge with awareness or God or whatever you want to call it. And but although fear has many disguises, it's all just fear. It's all just resistance. Mm-hmm. And when you get good at facing one type of fear, it helps you to understand how to not take the other types of fear so seriously. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question, Joe, or is that helpful?
Yes, that's helpful. There's, I guess I got the impression from the way you worded it before that that this an ego death can kind of surprise a person. I mean,
well,
can it come on?
It can. People like Eckhart Tolle or Byron Katie, they have that quick thing. But for most of us mere mortals, it's usually, a long slog, of a little bit of letting go of resistance, a little bit of letting go of fear. And for the people who aren't just hit by like a truck of grace, like Eckhart Tolle, it takes a while, and you have to work through those types of resistances.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Very helpful.
Good.
Thank you, Joe. And again, if anybody has any questions as we're going through this, please just raise your hand and, feel free to ask. Jonathan, I just wanted to, sometimes people have different definitions of enlightenment and awakening. So I was wondering if you would share yours.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to steal it from Adyshanti because I thought he had a really simple, easy one. He said, enlightenment is a shift in identity from your ego to being either your awareness or God or love or presence. But fundamentally, it's a shift of identity. Normally we think we are our ego personality. So if somebody says, well, you're being a jerk, we take it very personally. What do you mean? Or our partner, a relationship, like, I don't like that you did that. We take things very personally. But if you're not your ego, if you're not your personality, if somebody said that, you go, really? What did he do? Because you are no longer identified as that. So personally, I go in and out of being thinking I'm an ego and thinking I am awareness or a presence of love, let's say. I do that, 50 times a day. And I suspect a lot of you do that as well. But enlightened people, fully enlightened people, never think of themselves as an ego. It's almost like you don't identify with that you are your pen or your car. They have to get used to, responding to that name because they have no relation to it. A lot of times, people I have interviewed on my podcast, Awareness Explorers, their normal way of talking about themselves is in the third person. They'll say, well, yeah, she does this or he does that, or they'll call themselves by their first name. I was interviewing a enlightened medical doctor I know, and I said, well, how do you do surgery while being, in an enlightened state? And she says, I don't know how Amy does it. She just does it. Well, that's her, but she had no identification with Amy. She says that body just seems to know how to do it.
That's a big lesson, I guess, for us to just allow it to go through us and, work through us.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious. Did you start out looking for just trying to find a way to be happy, or did you actually start out trying to be enlightened? Like, when you first began all this?
Well, it's interesting. What got me into this originally was my uncle was a hypnotist, and he one day hypnotized my very shy sister to think that she was Mick Jagger. So my 14-year-old sister gets up on a table and starts belting out "Can't Get No Satisfaction." And I'm thinking, well, I'd like to be Mick Jagger. Can I be somebody else? So that was the original inspiration, but certainly trying not to be depressed was my original motivation. And then it became more after I took psychedelics. Well, how can I get there? How can I get that state without the drugs? And that became much more, I didn't think of it in terms of enlightenment. I thought of it in terms of, I want to get high on MDMA and LSD and stay there. And in fact, I now lead a lot of MDMA journeys over Zoom. I've come up with a protocol that helps people know how they can get into the same state of love and peace without the medicine, without the drug. And that's what I do most of the time nowadays, is that I help people figure out a way how to get into their highest, best self, but without supplements of drugs or things like that.
Do you want to take us through that meditation?
Well, I'll do a short version of that. For people who want to know more about it, I'll put in the chat a course I'm doing because it's getting very popular nowadays. I just got interviewed by Nightline about this because it's getting a lot of interest lately. And of course, people can also contact me personally at my email address, which is this, and I'd be glad to send them information. But I'll do a short guided meditation on this. When I do it with clients, it often takes about an hour.
Wow.
But this will hopefully give you a slight taste and hopefully be useful for you. So the first thing to do would be to close your eyes and make yourself relaxed. And just get comfortable. Take a couple of slow, deep breaths. And what I'd like you to do is to think of a time where you felt really, really good. Maybe you were high on a drug. Maybe you were high on a retreat. Maybe you were simply just feeling great, feeling a lot of love. Take some time to think of a specific time like that. And as you think of a time like that, I want you to feel into what that felt like. Notice as you relax and let go into that experience. What opens up for you? Imagine that you could breathe in more of this experience with each breath that you take, remembering what that experience is like. Now imagine that you have a knob on your hand. That knob is currently at level 4 out of 10. And you're going to turn up the feeling of love or peace or whatever feelings so that they're even stronger. you feel yourself radiating even more. You feel a sense of your heart radiating energy, expanding beyond your boundaries. And just savor with gratitude this feeling. You can think of a person or animal that you have great affection for. And as you think of them, imagine sending them love and gratitude. And when you're ready, take your time. Slowly come back to your chair. Now you're welcome to maintain in this state as much as you can, as best you can. Noticing the different feelings in your body, the energy moving through. But when you're ready, if you feel like it, feel free to slowly open your eyes. Now, Lynn, when I work with people, sometimes on MDMA over Zoom, I ask them for 20 very distinct questions of exactly how are you experiencing the state of love? How are you experiencing letting go of ego? And the idea is that you find your unique way to find the breadcrumbs back to that state without the drugs. And it's kind of like, finding your own personal recipe for love, peace, and joy. And what I found is that everybody has a slightly unique recipe for that experience. But when it's written down or clearly delineated, it's much easier to get back there.
I'd like to open it up to see if anybody has any comments. I see some people are still in that beautiful state.
Yeah, they didn't want to leave it.
Right.
We always lose a few in this. Yeah.
Definitely a joy.
Sometimes people don't want to talk, like, I don't want to talk. I'm just wanting to rest in this. But yeah, if anybody has anything to share, I'd be glad to hear that. Now, that was just like a 3-minute meditation, as I say, when there's a lot of subtle information about how people's bodies, energy fields, minds open up when they are in this experience. But Rhoda, what do you have to say?
I waited for someone else to ask a question first, but just couldn't. I can't help it.
Please.
What happened when you asked about fear, how quickly it came in? I noticed the exact opposite with this particular question, which was to find a moment when you felt that kind of exuberance. I guess the question that comes in is that just a part of how the programming is working. Basically, we are trained to stay away from anything that could potentially be a mistake, anything that might cause failure. Like that's the way training goes in our culture. So it feels like it's almost hard to grab something so I wondered, did you have any insights on how you get people to grab onto those things that just automatically bring me joy? Like, there are very specific times, like, having a baby or being on vacation in Hawaii. Like those are very specific times, but they're not as frequent as the fear ones. And that just kind of blew me away. So any guidance you have on how to get people there, how you would get a person there?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Maybe I can practice a little bit.
It's a great question. One way is to go through all the photos you have of people that you love, of pets that you love, of peak moments in your life, and have them accessible, and looking at the photos and thinking like, just to give you a sense of how much I love my dog. This is a picture of my dog when he was a puppy. I put him on his shirt.
That's adorable.
Cute.
How can you not love that face, right?
Can you not? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm madly in love with my dog. Don't call the authorities on me, please. But so I have pictures of her as a puppy that practically bring tears to people's eyes. They're so cute. And, there's other pictures or moments in my life. And I actually have a laminated sheet of paper with the 30 most amazing experiences, joyous, loving experiences I've ever had in my life. And I'll remember them, tap into that feeling. But as I say, when working with someone, I ask 20 very precise questions so that they can get the details about how they open up to these experiences,
Right.
and how you can really shift your energy field from our normal constricted way that we relate to things, protected way, to being able to expand. And, it's really important to be able to constrict. A hand that is always constricted is not really a hand, it's a club. A hand that's always open is not very useful either. It's just a thing to slap flies with. But the fact that we can open and close it makes it very useful.
Mhm.
And the same with our heart, that we need to be able to open our heart very quickly. And also sometimes, if you're in a city and it's loud and people are coming at you, how to close down ourselves so we're more protected. When you can do both very quickly, and everybody has their unique formula, then life becomes really interesting because it becomes very alive. And it's something that unfortunately we never learn in school, but with practice, just like anything that you practice, you get much better at. It used to take me like an hour to open my heart fully to, that love and thing. Now it's down to maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So that really makes life a lot more joyous.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's very helpful pointer. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew that would touch us deeply. So I have another one of your stories that I'd like you to share. In your book, The Enlightenment Project, you stated that a good story can also act like a hypnotic spell that seeps into one's life in a mysterious way. So when you share, who are you? That really made an impact on me. You traveled and sat in front of your Punjabi guru?
He was often called Papaji, but Punjaji also.
Okay. Would you share that with us?
Sure. So some of you might know who Papaji was. He died in about 1996, I think. But he was a student of Ramana Maharshi. And I hadn't heard of him, but I was in India and everybody said you should meet him. So I went to his, what I thought was his ashram. Ends up it was his house. And, I knock on the door and somebody answers. And as soon as I enter the house, he's up front in his living room and he tells me to sit in front of him. So I do. And there's like 20 people, 30 people or something in the living room. I'm kind of nervous. And he gets really close to me. He goes, "Who are you?" Well, I didn't know the protocol, so I said, I'm Jonathan Robinson from the United States. And he and the 30 people in the living room start busting up laughing. They thought that was a hysterical answer. I thought, that's the wrong answer, So he then says, "Well, no, who are you really?" And I go through a bunch of roles. I say, "Well, I'm a writer," and he goes, "Yeah. I'm a seeker. Yeah. I'm a husband. I'm a man." We did this for about 2 minutes. I kind of ran out of roles. So then I just decided I'd be quiet. I didn't want to dig my hole any deeper. And I said, well, I just started looking in his eyes. And this guy had eyes that were like shining lights coming out of it. And I've seen that in a couple other gurus, but it was always like, wow, what is that? So I just like silently look into his eyes. I'm doing this for about 20 seconds. And then something like a tsunami of love hits me very unexpectedly. Like, wow. And my reaction to that was I just started sobbing in his lap. And I couldn't stop sobbing in his lap. I'm starting to drool in his lap. I mean, it got embarrassing after a while. But so I'm sobbing in his lap, and he taps me on the head, and he says, "This love is who you really are. And your job in life is to never forget that." And, you know, what struck me about that, besides everything, was he said that this is your job. And when I interviewed a lot of spiritual leaders, you know, I'd ask them, what's the purpose of human life? And they all said the same thing. And for, you know, $12, you can find the answer in my book. I'm joking with you. Since you invited me here, I'm going to tell you it for free. And that is, they all said the same thing, though. They said, your first job is to find peace and love within. And your second job, if to the extent that you do that, is to go out and help people. Now, that's not that much of a revelation. It's just that most of us are not very good at either of those jobs. So that's why we're here. And, you know, most people work 40 hours a week at their job, but they don't spend 40 hours a week trying to find the best ways to find peace and love within. I mean, to some extent, I'm preaching to the choir. You're here, but still, we live in a culture or a culture that doesn't value inner peace and love. You know, we value, you know, 100 things more than that. So it's not easy unless you form together with other people to form your own culture that is hopefully focused in that direction.
Yeah, that was beautiful. You know, our job is to get in touch with that overwhelming unconditional love. And, you know, what I realized when you said that was, you know, most of us do have those times of sheer joy and love, you know, even if it's only short-lived, or like making a list so that we have it in front of us and we can just go back. Or as you also often said, you know, just being with your dog, you know, your pet. Yeah, I was going to ask you to tell us about your story about Mother Teresa and how you actually got in touch with her.
So I was doing a book that was published by Hay House called The Experience of God. And I wanted to interview 40 spiritual leaders, certainly her and the Dalai Lama and all the rest. But I didn't have money to go to India. So I thought I would try a Hail Mary, which is to call some number where, you know, somebody might know how to contact her. So this was prior to the internet. So I go to the library and I, you know, after hours of research, it's not exactly Google back then, I find out that she's connected to an organization called the Sisters of Charity. So calling India in 1993, I think it was, and having anyone answer a phone was kind of like calling a random number and having Joe Biden answer the phone. You know, so, you know, it was like, well, this is ridiculous, but why not? So I call this number in India and a woman answers the phone. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I say, you know, I'm Jonathan Robinson and I am doing this book where I interview spiritual leaders, and I'm trying to interview Mother Teresa. Do you know anyone who might know of her or know of a way of getting a message to her? And the woman politely says, yeah, this is Ma. And I said, Ma, can you be of any help here? Do you know anybody who knows Mother Teresa? And she says, yes, this is Ma. And it hit me that the voice sounded familiar. And I said, you're Mother Teresa? And she said, yes, how can I help you? Well, once again, I started crying because this was a friggin' miracle, obviously. And it was so a non sequitur for me that I said, my first question was, why'd you answer the phone? And she said, I normally don't answer the phone, but it was ringing when I walked by, which is a good answer. Anyway, so we had a short interview. At one place, I asked her, how do you meditate? Because I was asking 10 specific questions. And she said, well, I really don't meditate, but I know the Dalai Lama knows a lot about meditation. Would you like his number? And I said, yeah, that would be very nice. Thank you. So the whole thing was just this outrageous, ridiculous form of grace. And I think when people are trying to be of service beyond themselves, that these moments happen where there's like divine intervention somehow. I've had that happen a fair amount in my life, and it usually happens when I'm trying to do something for other people.
Mm. Yeah. I wanted to go back to fear a little bit. You said fear is a self-imposed prison hell. But I thought, would you share how sometimes our only focus on the fear versus how an enlightened person focuses on the fear, where an enlightened one sees fear?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that. So I would ask people, how do you experience fear? And the enlightened people would all say the same thing. They'd say, actually it reminds me, I was asking somebody, an enlightened person, do you experience negative emotions? And they kind of looked at me strangely, and they said, I can't really relate to any part of that question. First of all, there is no doing, there is no you, there's nothing negative, and there's no emotions. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know what to say, but I guess the answer would be no, So enlightened people, if you're quite enlightened, you might experience certain sensations moving through a field of awareness very swiftly, but you might not label it as fear, or you might not even label it as unpleasant. You would label it as, that's a sensation moving through this field of awareness. So that's how a lot of the enlightened folks would perhaps answer that question.
Just accepting it as something that is, right? It's just...
Yeah, it's. I mean, if somebody said, touch your hand like this, how do you experience it? Well, you'd say, I experience it as a sensation in my hand, or I feel it as a sensation for a moment. There wouldn't be the resistance that we normally have around uncomfortable or difficult emotions, and there wouldn't be a you around it. So it's the sense of you and resisting that really creates more of a problem than the actual sensations.
Mm-hmm. Would you read your Sufi poem and tell us how it came about?
Right. I actually have to get on my computer real quickly, which I will do. So a lot of people are familiar with the story of, it's a Sufi poem. See if I get here. It's about a guy who is, forgive me for not having it up. I have to actually find it. But it's about, you've probably heard of this story where somebody has a horse and it ends up that he loses a horse, and eventually other horses come by. Well, I created a story around that, or not a story, but a song. And I guess on some podcast, Lynn must have heard me say it. And I wrote this many years ago, and I thought it would be fun to do it on a podcast. And then she asked me if I would do it for your group. So I will say the little poem or song that I created. It's a nice story too. Once long ago, there lived an old man. He had no money, he had no plan. All that he had was a horse, oh so grand, and he and his horse lived off of the land. Well, the king offered him riches for this horse so fine. He said, I'll give you my money if you make your horse mine. But the old man said, no, the horse won't be sold. He lives free with me. He lives free and bold. But then one day the horse, he was gone. The horse has been stolen, the townfolk cried on. The old man said, friends, don't look so sad. Though the horse is gone, it may not be bad. And the horse soon returned with others by his side. There were 12 now of beauty and pride. The townfolk cried out, old man, you are right. You're blessed to have horses of an earthly delight. The old man had one much beloved son who rode one of the horses one day just for fun. But he broke both his legs while playing this game, and the townfolk cried out, oh, what a shame. The old man said, fools, don't judge so soon. You hear just one note, but you sing the whole tune. Who's to say what the future may hold? My son's legs are broken, but the future untold. Well, soon there was a war, and the young men of town were all sent to fight, and every one was shot down. But the old man's son was saved from this plight. Since he had broken legs, he was not forced to fight. And the townfolk cried out, again you were right. But the old man replied, have you no sight? Only God knows what is and will be. To live and let live is to live and be free. It's a great story. And, the mind is always creating stories about what things mean. When my stepfather used to beat me up, I remember once he beat me up, and actually I had to go to the hospital. And at the time I thought, this is the worst day of my life. Now I look at that, that's the best day of my life, because that got me into meditation and hypnosis and spirituality. I hit that tipping point. So, we don't necessarily know it's good or bad, but our mind is always making those judgments. We hear just one note, but we sing the whole tune. Mm-hmm. And that's a good lesson to remember.
Yeah. Two of our Jacqueline and Rhoda are doing the Tao Te Ching. So that poem just reminded me of, what the Tao Te Ching teaches too. Mm-hmm. They do it on Sunday nights at 6. So I loved your gratitude story too. When you went, so you want to share how you found out about gratitude from the guru too? How did that come about?
Sure, that's a great story. First of all, when I interviewed all these people for a book back in '93, I was very surprised. I'd always ask the question, what attitude or thing do you think helps people connect with God or the divine the most? And I thought people would say love or something like that, but the number one answer by far was gratitude. And this surprised me, but it got me focused on the importance of gratitude. But I'm a little too lazy to actually keep a gratitude journal. So I hadn't really focused on it that much, but I had a friend that came back from India, and he looked all lit up. And he looked like he was radiating. I said, what happened in India? And he said, well, my guru gave me this, quote, magical mantra that helps me to feel gratitude all the time. Well, I am always interested in the best techniques for expanded states of consciousness. So I I eagerly said, well, what's the mantra? And he said, I can't tell you. It's a secret. You have to go and get it directly from the guru yourself. Well, by now I actually had enough money to travel to India. So I went to India, and India is 20,000 miles away from where I am. And it's also a very hard place to travel if you've ever been. So I took a rickshaw through polluted streets and for hours. And then I get to the ashram, and there's a 3 or 4 hour line to talk to the guru. So I'm kind of like pissed off that I have to go all this way to get the friggin' mantra. But, I'm committed. So I'm there. And finally I get a chance to talk to the guy. And I say, Guruji, can you please tell me what your mantra is for helping people feel gratitude all the time? So in a deep Indian accent, he kindly says, yes, my mantra is the most powerful mantra on earth. And he leans in to whisper into my ear so, nobody can hear. And I'm not even breathing at this point because I don't want to mispronounce it. I just want to know exactly what it is, okay? I'm very excited. He says, whenever possible, repeat these words. The mantra I give you for feeling gratitude all the time are the words, thank you. I'm remembering this moment. I figured he's kidding, so I look at him, but he's like totally serious. And I finally realized that that's actually the mantra. And I go, that's it? I traveled 18,000 miles to get thank you, that's it? And he looks at me very sternly and he said, no. That's it is the mantra you have been using. That makes you feel like you never have enough. My mantra is thank you, not that's it. That's it will take you nowhere. So I'm totally pissed off. So I say, well, thanks for nothing. And he says, thanks for nothing is not the mantra. You must say it from your heart many times a day. So when you eat good food, say thank you. When you see your child or a sunset or your pet, say thank you from your heart, and soon you'll be filled with gratitude. So I'm still pissed off. I say, okay, thank you, Guruji. And I leave, and, I figure I'll try it just because I traveled all this way. So I get in a taxi. It's about 110 degrees in India, and this taxi, maybe the only taxi in India that had air conditioning. I go, oh, dear Lord, thank you for this air conditioning. I get to the hotel, and there's a bottle of water there, purified water. I drink, I'm dying of thirst. So thank you for this water. And I open up my computer, and this hotel had Wi-Fi, and I had Skype. So I Skype my wife. And I'm talking to my wife on the other side of the planet for free instantaneously. I mean, that used to take 30 years to do that. Now I'm talking to her for free. And it strikes me that, I have the money to do this. I have this computer. I have Skype. I have all these things. I have a beautiful wife. And I feel all this gratitude, and tears start flowing from my face. And my wife says, wow, that must have been some mantra. And I said, you have no idea, it really does work. It develops a momentum. Normally kind of the mind's way of looking at reality is no thank you. No thank you for this person who just cut me off. No thank you for all the things I have to do. No thank you for my job, which I now have to go to. No thank you for this. No thank you for that. And to really feel your heart and say thank you to God or creation is my type of tool, because it takes like 5 seconds.
Yeah. And gratitude is such a big one. It just makes life better. You said happiness is a skill we can all learn. But you consider yourself a methods junkie, and gadgets. In fact, I have some of your gadgets here. I ordered a ring. Yeah. I shared it with my family, and they were like, "Oh my goodness, this is so relaxing."
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us maybe your favorites? Because I realize it's already 8:30.
Well, I did write a whole book called The Technology of Joy, the 101 best gadgets, tools, and supplements for feeling more delight. So people can look that up. I like ones that everybody likes, like jacuzzi hot tub, and things like that. But, I kind of like this. I actually have one here. These finger acupressure rings, and they stimulate points on your finger or toes, and it helps you to feel more relaxed. I like that guy. I can put it in my pocket. I think really I like certain supplements called nootropics I talk about in The Technology of Joy, which help you to feel really good and are actually good for you. Now, the most common nootropic is caffeine, but if you drink a lot of caffeine, it starts to have less impact. But there's a lot of new nootropics that actually give you energy and make you feel good. And I think in this day and age, we need all the help we can get. So, even having a smartphone with the pictures of loved ones is a gadget that can help open your heart. But I have a lot of these gadgets, and if people want to know my full list of 101, they can look at that book.
Yeah, that's why I love chocolate. Well, that
Yeah, well, yeah, right.
Right. Okay, so I wanted to go back to that fear and talk a little bit about the happiness with our children. Like they're saying depression is so high, especially after COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And from your point of view, like what can parents do? How can we help? Whether it's our children, ourselves, whatever. I mean, I know we've done a lot with meditations, but is there anything else that you can add?
Well, on my Awareness Explorers podcasts, I always end with the tagline, keep exploring. Even if 90% of stuff didn't work for you, if you tried 10 things, you found one thing that does work for you, and then you have a friend for life. Mm-hmm. So most people are using methods that are like 2,000 years old. These are the same people who wouldn't even think of using an iPhone from 10 years old. So a lot of really great stuff has come out in the last few years, and I try and share that in the Enlightenment Project book and on the podcast. And now I'm realizing I forgot what your original question was, but I started to blab. So maybe you can.
No, we were talking about different happiness techniques, but I think it brings me to the 3 good things, the method. If you want to share that, because I was thinking that's also really good to do with everybody, children too.
Sure. But, and in the book, there's a lot of methods that are kind of like the greatest hits, and some of them take a while to explain. But, everybody knows how to dance to their favorite songs or just shake off fear. That's the way most mammals deal with fears. They just shake their body. If you watch your dog, you've been, afraid of another dog, that's what they do. So those are 2 very simple things. One thing that I found a great little meditation that anybody can do is make a list of 20 people you have loved in your life or appreciated, and spend a minute thinking about what you love and appreciate about each one. Mm-hmm. You're encasing yourself in the vibration of love. What could be more powerful than that? So there's a lot of really simple yet powerful things that people can do that we often don't do because we get caught up in life. So those are some very simple ways, but for the 3 good things, that's a positive psychology method. I'm lazy, so I do what's called one good thing. You think of what's one good thing that's happened in the last day. One good thing that happened in the last day, my wife and 2 dogs, we have 2 golden retrievers. We often have a little wake up and love party in the morning, where our dogs jump on the bed and they lick us, and we cuddle with them, and it's really just a celebration of another day where everybody's healthy and such. So that might be a good thing that happened to me today. Then I think you asked yourself the question, what trait in me or ability allowed that good thing to happen? Well, I take really good care of my dogs and they love me back. And I try and take really good care of my wife and she loves me back. So it helps you to see that any good thing in your life really is a result of some positive trait in you. And when you do this every day, you start to feel yourself as a messenger of happiness, healing, and good things. Because you start to see it, there's certain traits or certain things you do that lead to these good things. And that's a very powerful way to actually increase your happiness and sense of self-esteem. So that's a quick explanation of the 3 good things, which I converted to the 1 good thing because I'm lazy, but it still seems to work.
Yeah, and I like that ending question. Why did that good thing happen to me today? Like you had a powerful example of really, not just saying it happened, but why did it happen? What did you do yourself to cause that?
Yeah, I teach a lot of seminars. I remember one seminar, the seminars I teach, I give evaluation sheets, where people can give feedback. I remember one seminar that I did, one person wrote, "This was the most wonderful day of my entire life. It was totally transformative. The leader was amazing, a beautiful vehicle for God's love and awakening." And I thought, well, that's a nice comment. And then I read the next one, and it was, "This was one of the worst days of my life. This was a total shit show. The leader was an egomaniac, maniacal asshole who could not help anyone, even if he tried." Now, they were both at the same seminar. I didn't really take either of them personally, but, neither of them necessarily saw that really what they were writing about was themselves. That the first person was very open to learning and all I had to say was hi, and I had them at hello. And the second person, it really didn't matter what I did. They were just cynical. They were, and they were going to have a bad experience. Not so much because of me, but because of them. And we don't normally see the world that way. So, the people on this call, if you're having a good experience, congratulations. You're open to learning. You have a divine spark. You love to learn. You love to be inspired. And if you're having a bad experience, well, that means that something's in the way of you having a better experience. It's really that simple. And that 3 good things exercise helps us to see that our experience of life is really just a reflection of us.
One of the other things I wanted to talk about was the spiritual aspirations and our goals. We're always encouraged here to write them out so that we have them. So how amazing would it be to combine our attitude, our perspective, and our signature strengths with our spiritual aspirations at work? We talked a little bit about work before. You discuss it as karma yoga, which is to do God's work in every moment of one's life. When what you do for work is just another expression of your awakening to inner peace, love, and God, and it's pure magic. That is just so beautiful. Do you want to talk a little bit more about spiritual aspirations and combining it with your life mission?
Yeah, we all have to, or not everybody has to work, but most people have to work. And a lot of times we compartmentalize spirituality, like on Sunday, I'll do my spirituality or my 1 hour a day. And then, work is to pay the bills. But it's always nice if you can combine those two and put spirituality into your relationship, your work, all these other things. So, it's taken me a lot of years to really combine them fully. But even just the spirit of service, whatever you do at work, can help you to see it through the lens of, I am serving something other than myself. And that brings a lot more alignment. So one of my spiritual aspirations was to be God's joyful servant. Well, ends up it is easier to be God's joyful servant when you're helping people expand their love and consciousness through the different things I do than working at McDonald's. But my old teacher, I lived with a spiritual teacher for 20 years. He had me work in McDonald's as my task. He said, yeah, it's pretty easy to feel good about your work when you're, getting paid to help people experience more love, but can you feel the sense of spirit while you're working at McDonald's? At the time, I was working on my master's degree, and it didn't strike me as fun to work at McDonald's, but I was like 27 at the time, and my boss was 16, so it was humbling. But I got to the point where flipping burgers, I'm helping people to, enjoy eating, and I'm serving food, and really it's a sense of the spirit, and the signature strengths thing is, we all have certain strengths, and if you can bring them at work, I'm pretty good at being humorous sometimes, and I'm pretty good at learning from other people. So while I was at McDonald's, I'd be cracking jokes with people and asking them about their lives and being curious about what they know that I didn't. And all that brings you into alignment where you're turning your work into part of your spiritual path.
Yeah, it's like the purpose of life is to find peace and love inside yourself, and then to go out and help the world. I got that from your book too.
Yeah. I was trying to sell that for $12.95, Lynn, but now you spilled the beans.
Whole book away.
Yeah, you spilled the beans, and oh well.
But I'd also like you to talk about the blocked intuition. Because you explained that very well too.
Well, let's come up with a definition of intuition. Intuition is maybe something you have access to once your mind is not screaming at you so much, or it's quieted. I think we all have a certain wisdom from a deeper place within ourselves. So a question I have often asked in my life is, what do I need to know or do to be of greater service to myself and others? What do I need to know or do to be a greater service to myself or others? And sometimes, to my surprise, a very definite voice or feeling has come clear. And when I have done what that inner voice or sense of knowing has revealed, those things have worked out really well. So I think it's a matter of creating that sacred space, having a lot of sincerity, and asking the right question. What do I need to know to make my relationship better? What do I need to know to make my health better? What would be a forward step on my spiritual path right now? And taking the time to listen. I wrote a book. Okay, here's an interesting story. I asked this question many years ago, and I actually heard a voice in my head say, take notes. Okay, so I get out a pen and paper, and out come 200 questions. And I say, well, what do I do with this? And the voice said, it's a book. Well, I didn't know anything about writing, so I wrote up the book, and then I sent it to a publisher or something, and they wrote back, we love this idea. And so they printed the book, and then through some miracle, Oprah found the book and devoted 2 shows to the book, so it became a New York Times bestseller. A called Life's Big Questions. And actually, it just got republished by another publisher like a month ago. So it's out there on Amazon. It's still selling. It's called Life's Big Questions by me. And it's mostly these very thought-provoking questions that you can ask friends and family. And so that's an example of listening to my intuition and doing what it says.
Beautiful. I'd like to open it up to anybody if they have questions. Yeah, Shauna.
I'm so enjoying this though, Jonathan. Thank you, because your humor it's essential for me to not take everything so seriously. So that the humor is very essential for me. And also your storytelling. I love being able to listen to a good storyteller. My question, one of the questions I had earlier is, and I'm sure this has happened multiple times, when you've interviewed a spiritual leader, is there a time when this something dropped in and you shifted and you saw something you've never seen before? Does something come to you that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Shauna, because nobody's ever asked that before. A lot of times when I've interviewed them, everybody transmits energy. But if you're with a Ram Dass, a Sai Baba, a Byron Katie, the energy can be really intense. And I remember I was interviewing Byron Katie one time. I saw her at a conference and nobody was around her. So I said, well, that's not right. So I go up to her and I start interviewing her. And, she has quite a presence. So after a while, I said, is it okay if I stop asking questions and just we look at each other's eyes? And she said, in the only way that's Byron Katie can say, oh, sweetie, I thought you'd never ask. Let's do that. So we do that. And I don't know how long we're doing that for. It might have been 2 minutes. It might have been 30 minutes because we just melted into another dimension of total oneness. And, at some point, somebody tapped me on the shoulder. There was a line waiting to now talk to her. I want what he's having, So a lot of times I started to see that, there's really just one, this is something Ram Dass has said, there's really just one of us here in drag. And it's not, that Byron Katie or Ram Dass or somebody has this. We all have this potential. It's all there. And we just have to find ways to trick ourselves to remember that. So with a lot of the interviews, they usually ended up with them thanking me. Oh, thank you so much. Those questions were great. I love just being silently here with you. And that struck me like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can do this too, So there really is just one of us, and being able to talk about this stuff with you is a great joy.
Great. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the emphasis on gratitude too, because when you embrace that, living from gratitude, so much opens up.
Any other questions? We only have like 4 minutes left. And I was just going to ask you, first of all, I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciated this. Thank you so much. But I wanted to know what your next goals are. I know you mentioned one of them with the finding happiness naturally.
Uh-huh.
And he has a ton of websites and he gives so much. We appreciate all of it.
My next goal is to have 0 goals, to just be in the moment and respond to it as deeply as I can. I'm far from that, so unfortunately, I do have goals. But I'm very into this helping people find their way back to love, whether through MDMA stuff or just finding their own unique path. That's why I present a lot of methods, and that feels good. But yeah, my personal goal is to let go of as much personal agenda as possible and just be a presence of healing. So that, I guess that's my goal right now, and we'll see if it happens.
Well, you're on a direct path, because this was so much fun, and we laughed, and it just was really enjoyable, and you gave us so much information, and there's still tons of information in his book that I didn't even touch on. But we do have another question. Is the Sufi poem printed? Like, somebody wants to get a copy of it.
Yeah, if they put in their email address, I'll send you a copy. And if you go to the enlightenmentproject.net, you get a free ebook of my 5 favorite quick awakening to love methods, plus an audio meditation of that. So feel free to do that as well.
And I heard you mention something about a Friday Zoom call.
Oh, there's a Vortex Healing. I don't do it, but there's great stuff all over the internet. And I try and put a lot of those, my favorite suggestions, in the book, because the more resources people have, you find something that really just wows you, and that's a win for everybody.
So everybody's complimenting and thanking you. We're so happy that you said yes and came. And this was just a great night. Anything else? Anybody?
Great questions, Lynn. You did a wonderful job, and it's fun. It's always a blessing for like-minded people to hang out with each other and go exploring.
Thank you so much. I guess this is it.
And that's the way. The tagline I use on Awareness Explorers is always keep exploring.
Sounds good. And
thank you,
curious.
Jonathan. I just want to reiterate how wonderful the interview was. Thank you, Lynn. You can find Jonathan on his bunch of websites here. One I want to mention is awarenessexplorers.com. Lynn also posted another one, findinghappiness.com. And there's also the enlightenmentproject.net. So heads up on all those different resources that are available. Thank you for watching our Satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.